Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Person You Want to Be. I am your host, Eric Teplitz. Today, I am honored to have as my guest, Nicole Bitar. Nicole Bitar holds a JD from Duke University School of Law and practiced high-stakes corporate litigation at one of the largest law firms in the southeastern United States. A personal crisis well into her law career became a catalyst for personal reinvention. Cara took the same dedication and commitment involved in becoming a successful attorney and applied it to searching for greater peace and fulfillment in her own life. Along the way, she became a Reiki Master, certified ThetaHealing Practitioner, certified SoulRealignment Practitioner, and a KRI certified instructor of Kundalini Yoga. Cara now teaches Kundalini Yoga and offers optimization programs and coaching to help others live with greater joy, abundance, creativity, health, and vitality. Nicole Bitar, welcome to The Person You Want to Be.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm delighted to have you here. The way I like to get started with these interviews, I know from listening to other interviews you've done that you were dead set on becoming an attorney from a kind of unusually early age. So I'm aware of that, and we're going to get into that. But before we do, what I'm curious to know is if you could please share with us a little bit of the context in which you grew up and what your childhood environment was like, and specifically with that in mind, your earliest recollection, whatever it might be, however fanciful it might be, but your earliest notion that you had as a kid of who it was you felt you were, or what it was you wanted to be, or who you wanted to be in the world.
Wow, these are good questions. So yeah, I grew up in a small town. And it was, yeah, just this like little small town. Like we didn't even really have any, like we had some like fast food restaurants, I guess, like an Eaton Park or something and some fast food restaurants. And my father was a college professor at a small religious college. And my parents also started a business. So that was really the environment that I grew up in. My dad had gone to seminary. He had a PhD from University of Virginia. My parents were originally from the West Coast, but they moved to this tiny little town because my dad wanted to teach at this specific college that had this like very religious kind of background, basically. And so that was the environment I grew up in. And who I thought I was, or I mean, I didn't really think I was anything. I really thought that I had to, like, as a child, these things weren't totally clear to me, but it was like I had this very strong sense of I have to prove myself. I have to become something. I have to show that I'm something. I have to show that I'm something, and it wasn't really like this, like, okay, who are you? And what is like it wasn't that. It was really this, like, I had this growing up in the small town that I grew up in and in the environment I grew up in. I really thought that there were two noble professions in the world. One was a doctor and one was a lawyer. And I really just honed in on lawyer. Like this, if I become a lawyer, somehow that's going to do something. Like somehow that's going to like make me something. And also too, if I get like perfect grades in school, like then that really matters. That really like makes me something. I wasn't totally aware of what was going on in my mind, but I just felt like I was just this like nothing. At the same time, I felt like I was innately bad.
Wow.
Like, yeah. So it's like I need to prove myself. I need to become something. I need to show that I'm worth something, and I need to be better than other people. That also really mattered, right? So it wasn't just like, it was like, well, how do I show I'm something? Well, I'm better than others. I get better grades than them. I'm at the top of my class with the grades I get. I play number one singles on the tennis team. It's just this very like, and I was constantly comparing myself to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this person's doing this, and I mean, this was at a young age. It was like, this person's doing this, and I'm not doing something as good as that, or I'm not doing as much as that, or so it wasn't it wasn't this like, how do I just express myself creatively in the world, and then at the same time too, I felt this obligation to do something that had some level of like, the world isn't in a good place, and I need to do something to like, that's going to somehow bring justice, because we live in this very unjust world. So it's like I had all of these notions going on and thoughts going on in my mind, even as a young child, that really drove me. Like, it felt so bad to feel so bad about myself. You know what I mean? But it's like I wasn't conscious of that I felt so bad about myself, but I did. I felt so bad about myself. And it really drove me to like, I will do something, like I will fix this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind and in the environment I grew up in, how I was going to fix it was I was going to become an attorney, and I was going to get really good grades, and I was going to be really good at everything I did.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I imagine that at least some portion of listeners will relate in their own way to that. I know I relate, not completely, but I related in my own way to what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Was your household, like, did you grow up in a strict religious household? Was that a part of your kind of,
It was.
environment? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like, I don't think like, I didn't think it was strict, but it was definitely religious, and the entire town was
Yeah.
religious. Like, I grew up in a small town. There was no, and it was like, I went to a public school, and there was prayer in the school, and there was all, like, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, that's just what, of course you were religious. Everybody
That was the
was.
norm. Yeah.
That was the norm. And then, of course, my particular family was, I mean, my dad had, gone to seminary, and he, made this point of teaching at this, religious school. And so yeah, it was definitely a part of my upbringing.
Do you think that you may have absorbed this concept of original sin and really taken it to heart? Do you think that was a component in what made you feel so bad about yourself?
I do. Yeah. I mean, because the thing is, it wasn't really like the concept of it as much as like, when we're children, we really, we take on these beliefs, right? And it really does have to do with our environment and our family. And not only that, we also, we're in tune with the energy of our family, right? So my parents believed that about themselves, right? Like,
Hmm.
they didn't, like, they held the belief on some level that like, they're not these brilliant, perfect, precious, love through and through beings, which is the truth. Instead, it's like, no, there's something, there's something wrong with us. Or if there isn't something wrong with us, we're somehow less than
Hmm.
this other being, or being in a physical body. This is one of the big things that, like, because I was a philosophy major, I majored in philosophy. My dad was a philosophy professor.
Huh.
And, one of the things is like, our bodies have, like, we have these physical instincts that are like going one way, and they're bad and wrong,
Hmm.
so that's something, as a child, if you're in that kind of environment,
Soup. Yeah.
that's going to be challenging, right? But I know that it wasn't just that, because if we look too at this kind of pervasive messaging that we
Hmm.
get from TV and advertisements and all the things, like, kind of the pervasive messaging is, there's something wrong with you.
Sure.
And you need this thing outside of you to
Right. And it's
fix
going to
that.
cost money.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, the pervasive messaging is certainly not like, you know, you came into this experience, this like precious, perfect being like that. This is not the messaging, right? So it's like kind of like, it's like whether you're in a religious environment or not, I still think you're getting
Yeah, you're
pretty
absorbing it
strong
from the
messaging
culture. Yeah, for sure.
from the culture. Yeah. And then constantly the comparing and the judging
Mm.
that we even do with children in like a school
Mm.
environment. You know what I mean? It's like, no wonder, it's like I always was trying to be better than others. That's it. That's not that's not going to lead you to like a good place, right? If you're constantly,
There's no peace in that. No,
there's no peace in that. No.
it's endless, and there's always going to be someone further ahead than you in some capacity. And it's an unwinnable game. I'm reminded of a quote that really stuck with me from Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth.
Hmm.
And that was, he says something to the effect of, if you feel, whenever you feel either inferior or superior to another person, that's your ego.
Mm-hmm.
And it really struck me because we think of egotism and we think of people feeling superior to other people. And we think of that, you know, being like a person being egotistical. But his message there is that on the other end of things, if you feel inferior to another person, to someone else, if you feel that you're less than, that's also your ego. In other words, it's not your true self. It's a false sense of your true identity.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Absolutely. It is not the truth of who you are. No one is inferior to anybody. No one is superior to anybody. But you're right. And yeah, and so for me, it was like I felt less than everybody else, and I was constantly trying to make up for that. And I promise you this, nothing made up for it.
Right.
No amount of good grades, no amount of accolades ever made up for that, and nothing ever would.
Right, because it was a fundamentally internal belief that of not enoughness.
Yeah, it's a
And
flawed belief.
yeah, and to be clear, like people can be superior in a particular realm, like they might have superior skills or talents in a particular avenue, but it doesn't make them a superior being. I think that I just want to make that clarification, right? Like we all have strengths and weaknesses.
Yes.
But there's also an inherent worth just by virtue of your existing in this world. You have worth.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a message we do not hear.
No, it isn't.
Very interesting that you observed that even your parents were, you could say, victims of this ideology, really, right? Like that they also felt they weren't good enough or that they had to prove themselves. And so maybe you absorbed this. And again, I'm not saying this was at all conscious or intentional, for instance, like on their part, but we do pick up on these messages, even if they are covert, even if they are under the radar, right? We pick up on them, maybe vibrationally or otherwise.
That's so true. We do. And like we're reading people vibrationally all the time. And children are especially clear about that. And so whatever whatever the parents do, like what they're holding energetically, even if they say something different, like the children they do pick up on that. Yeah. And this isn't to blame or anything like that, but it's just like we sometimes just got to be real about like what's happening here. And yeah, children pick up on those things because they're more in tune energetically. They haven't been so hidden from themselves in a sense, but we're always reading people energetically. But again, we don't realize that we're doing it most of the time, but yeah, we certainly
and for children, it's literally a matter of survival. Like they need to be attuned to their environment and know how to behave so that they will survive. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it's a deep instinct, I think. Did you have siblings growing up?
I did. I had a younger brother.
Okay, so you were the firstborn, which is a whole other discussion,
perhaps. whole other discussion, yeah.
But perhaps that also was a piece of it too, in terms of the drive and the ambition. So, at what point, like, did it get in your brain, I'm going to be a lawyer? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, it was 5th grade. It was, and I was like, it was interesting. I mean, I was in fifth grade reading psychology books. Like, I should have seen the writing on the wall that somehow down the line I was going to end up, like being interested in this stuff. But I just like, I was kind of like tormented in a way. Like, it was like something's off. Like, I felt it and I knew it. And I mean, no one would have noticed this from the outside. But it was like something seemed off to me. Something seemed wrong. And I was like reading these psychology books, like trying to figure things out. But at the same time, I'm in this certain environment. I'm in this certain, and I'm a child. And so, but yeah, I made that decision really young. And I don't remember when, but like, I mean, I had like Harvard law sweatshirts, like as like a little kid, like that I was wearing around, like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a lawyer. And the thing too is that like that did give me a level of like, it was almost like it was almost like in my mind a solution in a way. It was like, okay, I feel bad about myself now. Again, like a lot of this was happening subconsciously.
Sure.
But it was like, but I can fix this. And once I become an attorney, I will have fixed this. Do you know what I mean? I will be different. I will feel different. I will,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, a lot of us have some version of that. Once I get to this milestone, once I have this achievement, once I collect this diploma, once I, then all will be well, and I will, be completely fulfilled, and all of that. And and I think that that's also like an endless treadmill, because you get that, and then there's always something else on the horizon. Oh, well, wait a minute. No, I got the degree, but now I have to, and it doesn't end, right?
It doesn't end. No, never ended.
Yeah. Is when you were reading these psychology books, was it in an effort, do you think, to understand yourself? Like what do you think you were trying to glean from that?
Yeah, I think I don't know, understand myself, understand the world. It was like I even saw from a young age, like again, like something's off. It's like I felt it, like something's off. I don't feel good about myself. And I thought it had to do with me being a woman initially. So I was reading psychology books about women. Because too, in that world that I grew up in that kind of religious atmosphere, women were not considered equal to men. Yeah, they weren't. And my parents, of course, were like, oh, that's nonsense. But it's like, we're going to church and they're literally telling me that. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like,
right.
Like, so, there's something that's not, why are we going to this church where they're telling me this?
Don't ask questions.
It's not true, but it's not coming together, and so I think it was like trying to figure out myself. I really think it was more trying to figure out this experience. Like it was like, I really, we hold within us great knowing, and it's like the truth of who we are is there, and it's always communicating to us. And it was like, it was communicating to me, and part of me was like hearing it, but it was being so muffled out by what everybody else was saying and everybody else was doing, and collective consciousness beliefs, and the environment that I was in. So it was like I had these inklings of like something's off, like I know something's off, and I want to feel differently, and I don't, but it was like again, like it's like you're in this environment, especially as a child, where you're not given, like you don't have a lot of autonomy, like you're going to school and you're with your parents, and it's just this constant, listen to me, look at me, look what I'm doing, listen to me, do what I'm doing, this is what you should do or need to do or have to do, and then you're being compared to all these other people. It's kind of it's a little rough, so it's a little rough to just be like, no, like what is my beingness telling me? Like, who am I, and why am I here? Like that. So it's like I had these inklings, but again, there was so much else.
Drowned out.
I really think, they were drowned out. I was like, I knew, but I couldn't just, go there.
Do you remember any experience at any point growing up of getting a glimpse of like having a different experience from what you described? Can you recall any situation or experience where that was affirming and made you feel good about yourself, and may have been a momentary reprieve from that harsh self-critic and get in line, get in line and do what you're supposed to do and achieve and be the best and all of that. Do you remember any reprieve from that at all?
Not really.
Oh man, that wasn't the answer I wanted to hear, but ouch. Yeah,
Not really.
wow.
I no, it was so, and this is the thing, when you believe that you're not worthy and you're not valuable, that's so untrue. And it's going to feel so bad to you. And how people deal with that is different based on how they're structured and who they are. But it's like that drove me so much. And there was nothing outside of me that was telling me differently. Do you know what I mean? There was nothing, I wasn't getting from anywhere outside of me telling me something different than that. You know what I mean? Like that was and like people might say, oh, but your parents told you they loved you or whatever. But the pervasive messaging was, like you have to go become something. It's like you're nothing and you have to go. It's like, we love you, but it's like, why? And, it's like, we love you, but like you're defective and you're deficient. And you've been created that way in a sense. Do you know what I mean? You've got to go prove yourself and you're going to be judged. And
right.
You're going to be judged.
No pressure.
You're going to be judged at the end of this life, and you're going to be judged in school,
Throughout.
And you're going to be compared to others. And I mean, it's kind of a recipe for, I think, kind of disaster in a way.
And dysfunction and disease. Yeah.
And dysfunction and disease. And so here's the thing. It's like, so we're living in this experience now where people look at these states of like dysfunction and disease and being unhappy and being depressed and like all these things and working so hard and being exhausted and being depleted. It's like, well, this is just normal. This is just life. Right?
Yeah.
It's not normal.
Right.
It's not life. It's been normalized. It's not who we really are. It's not what we could really experience. But again, like we're seeing kind of the repercussion of like,
yeah. I recently had on the show Daniel Maté. He and his father, Dr. Gabor Maté, have a book out that just came out recently called The Myth of Normal. And it's exactly about describing the toxic culture that we are all swimming in and that we accept as normal. We accept all of these things as normal when they're anything but, and they're causing a lot of disease and distress and dysfunction and really just things that we need to reverse for our own health and for the health of us individually, collectively, societally, the health of the planet, everything, right? So
yes.
Anyway, so you decide to become you go to college and you choose philosophy as a major. What went into that decision? I could guess, but I'll ask.
Yeah, I think it was part that was my dad was a philosophy professor. I did go to college early, so I started going to college when I was in high school, and so I did take, I had a full semester of philosophy classes before I even went to college, so I kind of knew I was like interested in it. I think it had to do with him, really.
Your dad.
Being a philosophy professor. I do think, though, that there was something in me that did find it interesting because I had these questions like, why am I here? And what is the purpose of all of this? And again, a lot of this stuff was going on subconsciously, but it was like, and why do I feel so bad all the time? You know what I mean? So yeah. Did
you get any answers from studying philosophy?
No. No, and the reason is because I entered college with this like mindset of this is how life is. I did not enter college with an open mind. I did not go into these philosophy classes with an open mind. I went into them basically that I was going to take the information I learned and shove it into the worldview that I grew up with, which was a worldview that was a religious worldview. So it was like I didn't go into college and into this with like, whatever it is, I'm open to that. Instead, I went into it like, okay, this is like the view I grew up with. This is the view I believe. This is the correct view. How do I now take everything I'm learning and kind of like
incorporate
shove it into that? And so it, I wouldn't say that college was this enlightening experience for me. It certainly wasn't. It was me being, really having tunnel vision and trying to fit everything into that, this is how I grew up, this is what I believe, this is what it is, let me just try to prove this is actually what is. And that isn't going to lead to
Interesting. So even though you may have encountered ideas, and I would think you must have it within those classes that challenged your notion of how things were, you, instead of questioning or entertaining other possibilities, you simply found a way to incorporate them or have those ideas. You absorbed them into your own already existing impenetrable worldview.
I did.
Amazing.
I did. It's like I did, and part of me was like, oh, I'm questioning things. I'm really analyzing these things. I'm really looking at these things. But now I know I wasn't, because I wasn't willing to let go of this worldview that I grew up in. I wasn't willing to let go of that. And we tend to do this because the way our minds work and the way we're structured is like we feel safe and secure if we're right. So it was part of this, like, me feeling kind of safe and secure and like, no, I'm right. And how I was raised was right. And what my family taught me was right. And like, this is what it is. And I did go to a Catholic college too. So it's not like I just went to somewhere that was...
it wasn't all existentialist classes.
No. I mean, it was quite a big philosophy department. And I look back and I think, wow, that could have been such an eye-opening experience for me, but it really wasn't. And I really had this tunnel vision. And I also really had this, like, I'm going to fit everything into my worldview. And again, a lot of this was going on subconsciously, right? It wasn't I wasn't conscious of what I was doing. I would have said to you, if you would have asked me, like, oh no, I'm being so open-minded. I mean, I'm a philosophy major and I'm just like questioning all over the place, but I wasn't.
Did you have in mind the track to law school, and did that maybe in part inform your decision? Like, this is a good major to prepare me for going to law school.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and I did. I had the law school was always in my mind. Like that's where I was headed, and so the philosophy was a means to that. I thought it would be it's like, this is going to help me think critically. And I also did a lot of pre-law classes. I was a Latin minor. Like, I did all of these things that I really, and again, it was very much towards this goal of being a lawyer. It wasn't like I went into college with this goal of like, let me find out who I am and let me find out, it wasn't that. I had, again, this very like, this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
So
what was your experience like at law school?
So it was okay. Like, I wasn't that interested in what we were doing, which should have been a sign, but that was never the thing for me. My life wasn't about what feels good to you. What do you like doing? My life was about discipline. My life was about hard work. And it was about doing things that I didn't want to do because, like, I had this notion of, well, I'm not in and of myself innately good, right? I'm not worthy. I'm not valuable. So it's like, well, I've got to fix this. So this isn't about what I want. This isn't about what feels good to me. This isn't about what's interesting to me. This is about, so, and again, subconscious, but yeah.
When you answered that question, I had this like vision in my mind of, you've completed your life and you're now like on the other side, however you want to imagine that, right? And you're being asked, so, how was your life? You're done, you did it, you completed it. And I just have this vision of young Kara saying, yeah, it's okay. It's like, and I say this as a joke, but how many people, really, honestly, how many people would say that?
So that's the thing. I think a lot.
Yeah, it was okay. It was good. It was okay. Yeah. It was all right. And what a shame. Well, I mean,
I so agree with you. What an absolute travesty that we're doing this. And the thing is, I know I'm not the only person who's done this.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
And it's a testament to how much of a hold this had on you, these expectations, right? And this, because you were all along the way having to suppress anything that contradicted them. and it was all just about endurance, right? Like you're
Yeah.
going to get through this, and your opinion or feelings don't really matter. It's the end goal, and you have to redeem yourself because you're inherently flawed. And the word you used was you have to fix yourself.
Yeah.
And that, like you were broken and you needed to repair that, and you needed to make
Hmm.
sure that forget about any even afterlife implications of this, but just like this is your experience of yourself. But you did somehow, right? You got through law school
Hmm.
relatively unscathed, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I was really good at putting my head down and doing things that I didn't want to do. And
Mm.
I was disciplined, and I knew how to work hard, and I had this like, if I work hard enough, I will get it done. And I did. I did. I got it done.
And
So yeah.
to be clear, that's not all a bad thing, right? Like
No.
those are very valuable skills to have,
Yeah.
right? It's just that, uh, as I've heard it said, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. In other
Hmm.
words, like if the goal is a true goal, and one that has true meaning to you, other than just trying to redeem yourself or fix yourself, like, but something that it really is meaningful to you, then that ability to put the head down and do the hard work and all of that, like those are valuable skills, as long as they're in service of something that, you know if you have a compelling why, in other words, right? If you have a really compelling reason, and your reason was compelling, I mean, what's more compelling than proving that you're worth something? I mean, that's
Yeah.
hugely compelling. It's just
Yeah.
sad because it was unnecessary. Because, but I just find that contradiction very interesting. That dissonance of these are the ability to work hard, the ability to focus, and self-discipline. These are all good things. It's just that they can be put in service of something that is, you know, uh, you could be this could be in service of something that supports your soul and your life's journey, or maybe doesn't.
Yeah. So I agree with that. And I would like to make a distinction. So I do believe commitment and conviction are really, I would say, necessary things to have. If you really want to, like, listen, we do have goals. We do have paths. We do have purposes. We do have things that we want to do. It does take conviction, and it does take commitment, and it does take effort.
Mm.
And it takes, standing in front of challenges and being willing to stand in front of those challenges and rise to them. And so I did have this in me, and I have used it since that point in time to now get me to where I'm currently at. What I would offer, though, the hard work thing, though,
Hmm.
I do like to make a distinction between hard work and effort, between hard work and rising to challenges, between hard work and conviction and commitment. Because when the way I define hard work, at least, is it's like if you're doing hard work, like, so for me, I worked hard my whole life only to get to become an attorney and work harder than I ever knew
Hmm.
I could work. And the reason for that was because I was choosing hard work. And so no matter what I did, I was just going to get more hard work. And so people don't realize this in a sense, like if I work hard, then I'll get this goal that I want. And there is a distinction in my mind, at least, between hard work and effort, which is hard work depletes us. When we're putting forth effort from a place of conviction and commitment towards the truth of who we are, towards what we are passionate about in life, towards, expressing our own creativity, we're actually energized by it. But when we put forth hard work, it's like it depletes us. And so as I'm going along in my whole life, it's like, yes, there are these underlying characteristics that I would say are, good things to have or beneficial things to have. But one of the things that I was doing is I was just I was working hard and it was just depleting, as opposed to what I've realized what I do now is I put forth a lot of effort, but it actually energizes me. Why? Because it's me expressing the truth of who I am. So there's like a distinction there that in my mind that I see.
That is so beautifully put. Really, thank you for that. That's a really, really great, important distinction. And I couldn't have said it better myself. Really, I think that is something I would highlight. Listeners, like, replay that last part. I think that is such an important point. Such an important point. And I've had experiences in my own life that validate exactly what you just said. And I think that that's also a good thing to pay attention to in our lives. If something is depleting us, that's worth paying attention to. And if something is energizing us, wow, is that worth paying attention to? And, it sounds so obvious on the surface, right? Like, do the things that energize you, do less of what depletes you. I mean, as much as you can balance that out, right? Like, do your best to focus on the things that energize you, and do your best to move away from those that deplete you. It all sounds great. And so many people find that really, really difficult to do. And the first step, I think, is just simply paying attention and being aware of that. Like, those huge, huge signposts, I think.
You're absolutely right. They're huge. They're massive. And it's like, again, I thought that that's just a normal thing. That's just what you do, right? If you want to get something, you've got to work hard and deplete yourself for it. So to get something, you have to give something. And so when I look at my life, it's like that. I feel like a very strong theme of it was hard work. And what that got me was more hard work.
Right.
What that depletion got me was more depletion. And why? Because I was choosing hard work and depletion. And so, and just
from an unconscious place.
From an unconscious place, exactly. And from an unconscious place, and from a place of like, oh, that's just, again, normal. And like,
and the outside world rewards it.
There it is right there. The outside world rewards it. Like, it's like I stayed up all night studying, or like when I was working at the firm, it's like I stayed here all weekend and worked, and of course now
bragging rights.
Yeah. It's like, oh, good for you. You just depleted your body. You just, but it's like, again, it's like we're taking these things in this experience, and it's like, go deplete yourself, go work so hard. That's honorable. Like, it doesn't really, no, it isn't. And it doesn't make logical sense. Why are you depleting your precious body? Why are you doing that to yourself? And here's the thing, is like, I didn't realize there was another way. And I think that's the thing too. People don't realize, well, actually, you don't have to do that. There is another way. But yeah, I didn't realize
that's another great point, right? If you don't see any other option, then you just plow ahead.
Just keep going.
So tell us about your law career.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, from the outside, it looked amazing. I was recruited by, and I took a job with, one of the largest law firms in the Southeast. I was doing high stakes corporate litigation. So I had this like really significant legal work that I was doing, national and international cases. I worked for a big firm, and so the firm had a lot of money. And one of the things that they did with that was they gave back to the community. And so I did a lot of pro bono work for victims of domestic violence, and I was eventually named head of that project. And so I felt really respected and appreciated by my colleagues. And it took me, it took some time, but I felt like I learned how to be a good attorney. Like, they trained me to be a good attorney and to really rise. And I did things that I, quite frankly, didn't think I was capable of doing. Some of the things they gave me to do, I was like, what? How am I supposed to do that? And I did them. And so...
Didn't think you were capable in what regard?
I mean, they would give me these assignments, and some of them would be like, I was just like I remember one time there are these particular financial instruments that experts don't even understand these things, and they were rising and falling in a certain way in certain markets at certain times, and no one could figure out why. And it was like, go figure it out.
I see.
Like, okay. Do you know what I mean? So it definitely challenged me. It made me rise. It made me, realize I could do more than I thought I was, quite frankly, capable of doing. And coming from a really small town too, I just remember walking into the building being like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I work in this like big building. And I work with all these people who are so, they have, they're so successful and they have so much money. I was kind of in awe with the whole thing, quite frankly, because it was so different from how I was raised. And so I really kind of felt like, wow, I like,
So you were in a big city at this point?
I was in a big city and yeah, so it felt kind of like, wow. And so I'm doing this, I have all this, I'm doing this work and I, it's like from the outside looking in, everything looked like it was going great. I had this charming home that I bought in the city. I had this beautiful wardrobe and I had money. Like I was making a lot of money, more money than I had ever made. And I could, buy beautiful clothes and like all the things, it's just this very different life than I had ever really lived. And it was really everything that I thought that I wanted. Like it was everything that I thought was going to like make me happy and make me feel valuable and make me feel worthy. And to a certain extent, like a little bit, it did, right? Like I felt a little bit better about myself, kind of like I'm working for this like prestigious firm and people know the firm and, it's like, and I'm making this money and I've got all these things. So there was a little piece of it, especially at first. It was like, okay, like this kind of feels good. But what the thing that really ended up happening was like after maybe the first year, you're just so like slammed. It's like I'm just trying to keep going. I'm just trying to keep my head up. I'm trying to just get the stuff done, right?
Keep up with everything.
And again, I had this kind of momentary like, wow, I think I do feel better about myself. I think I do feel better about myself now, That really didn't last. It really didn't last. And I ended up, it was just like after that those kind of initial hits wore off, I found myself just so deeply unhappy, like so deeply, deeply unhappy and so confused. Why am I so unhappy? I have everything that everybody told me was going to make me happy, and I am so unhappy. And life took on this very like meaningless, it felt so meaningless to me. Like even though I was doing this significant legal work and even though I'm doing this like pro bono work and for the pro bono work that the clients, they would be so grateful. Like, oh, you helped me so much. I so appreciate you. And I'd have this momentary like, oh, that felt good. Then it just gone.
Wow.
And I felt like it was just this very like this deep unhappiness, this deep unfulfillment, almost like this emptiness. And at the same time, this like numbness. And it was, and I would go home at night. I would go for a walk in the dark, kind of just stumble around in the dark. Like, I can't believe this is my life. I can't believe this is life. This can't be all it is. And as much as I was having a lot of success, like we did work a lot. So I was working really hard. I was hardcore depleting myself. Like by the time I got home at night, I was just like leveled pretty much from what I was doing. And so, yeah, it was just this really confusing thing. And I blamed myself for it. I was like, here I am. I have everything. I have everything I worked for. And I'm like so unhappy. And I kept trying to like make myself happy. Like, no, this is going to work. I am going to like this. This is because I've worked my whole life for this and I have it. I have the job that most people cannot get. They will never get a job like that. And they like me here. Like they appreciate me. They're not, people will get fired from jobs like that, and yeah, it was a very confusing thing.
Did you have anyone to confide in during that time to let, to talk about how you were feeling or?
What I did is in any free time I had, it was like I was trying to find answers. So I did go see like different healers, like different, like I would go get Reiki every weekend, and I would talk to the women who did that. And I would try to like express myself to my husband, but it was like no one had any answers for me. just that just was what happened. It was like there were no answers
Which
to
probably
be
just
had.
made you feel that much worse, I would imagine, or at least like isolated.
It did, and it was like no one has answers for me. There's no way out. This is all life is.
Mm, wow.
You know, and I remember too talking to one of my colleagues one time who was just again someone, you know, I mean Harvard Law, super successful, like, you know, and I was just like, so are you like excited to get up in the morning? You know, do you feel passionate about the work that you're doing? Do you feel, you know, excited about life? And he was just like, no. And I was just like, what do you like? Why? You know what? And he was just like, listen, this is just what life is. It's like we have it good. We make a lot of money. We have a good job. Like, no, I'm not excited about this. I can't wait to get a break from it. And you know, but like this is what life is. Like this is what it is. And I just remember that it was like that conversation was like it just sucked everything out of
Oh,
me. You know, like there has to be something more. And that's the thing too, when you're in an environment like I'm in, everybody's making really good money, right? And so they've got money, they've got, you know, the house, the car, they've got the two cute little kids or whatever going to the private schools, they've got the vacation homes, you know, and again, they've got these degrees from these great schools, and they're well spoken and they're kind and they're committed. And it's like, so you feel like you're around these people that would, I don't know,
that
they've
maybe would
worked,
be happy with themselves or their
yeah,
lives.
and who have worked so hard to, you know, in my mind, working hard was
Sure.
something laudable. They've worked so hard to get to where they are. And
That's
yeah,
really, really interesting. I mean, you know, it speaks to the trappings, not, you know, the outside not necessarily being the same as the inside.
mm-hmm.
Um, having all the trappings, but feeling empty inside. And I'm not saying
Yeah,
everyone in that position necessarily, you know, felt that way, but I mean,
that's right.
here you have this, you know, you know, this genuine moment with your colleague, and he basically dismisses like, no, of course not. Why, you know, that's
Yeah.
not what life is. Something else that really strikes me about that is this idea of gratitude. And I think that most people, especially superficially, would say, oh yeah, gratitude, you need more of that, that's always good, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
thing is that it is, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
gratitude is really, in my experience and observation, a game changer. And gratitude is hugely important, especially to overall well-being. That's my personal thing, my personal take, right? However, I think that it's bastardized a bit. And in other
Mm-hmm.
words, like there's this sense of you should be grateful,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because there are people in the world who have it so much worse than you do. So
Mm-hmm.
you should be grateful. And it's almost like this, uh, it's almost like well, it's a judgment, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a condemnation, even like, how dare you complain with all of the privileges that you have and all of the, you know, like blessings that you have? How dare you not be grateful? But the thing is that that's not, you can't, that's not genuine gratitude, right? Like that's sort of like gratitude at gunpoint, like, oh, I better be grateful. Um,
Yeah.
and it's not
Yeah.
coming from a real, like, it's not really heartfelt, right? It's more of like a
Mm-hmm.
guilt-driven sense of I
Yeah.
should be. Well, there's the red flag, is the should be,
They should.
right?
Yeah,
Fascinating.
this is an excellent point. It's an absolute excellent point, and it was really how I was feeling. Like I felt guilty. Like I feel terrible,
Mm,
but I shouldn't feel bad.
right.
But here's the thing, I did. I
Yeah.
did feel bad, and I was trying to make it work. Nothing was making it work for me. No matter how much success I had there, it's like it didn't matter. I felt bad. And those feelings were telling me something really important. They were telling me
How did
something
this
important.
manifest, like, in your life, when you say you felt really bad? Like what kind of signs and signals? What did this look like?
Yeah, it was just, I mean, just like I felt, yeah, I felt really bad at the same time. Like I felt numb. I felt like a robot. Like I was just going
Mm.
through the motions. Like I became this really good actor. You know, it'd be like, oh, can you take on this case at 8 o'clock on whatever night or whatever? Can you? Yes, I'd love to do that. That'd be amazing. That sounds wonderful. Do you know what I mean? Like I just, it was like this, like I felt really bad and I felt numb and I felt robotic
Hmm.
and I really, really felt depleted. It was like it was like trying to get myself to, everything just felt so hard. Everything felt like such a grind. Like, oh, I've got to get this done. Can I push this thing out? You know, can I get
Yeah.
this brief written? Can I? And then it was always this like, oh, don't look at my email. I don't like, I
Yeah.
just, yeah, there was no passion for life. There was no excitement. I was operating on adrenaline. The thing that kept me running was adrenaline. It was stress. It was not a, wow, I'm excited about life. I'm excited about this new thing that's going to happen, or I feel invigorated by life. And it too was like, even when I was like with somebody like my husband, I was like there, but I wasn't.
Hmm.
I just like, it's like, it was hard to be really present with, you know, kind of be in
Did
those
he
moments.
notice this, or was this just like business as usual kind of thing?
No, he noticed.
Okay.
Yeah, he noticed. Because most of the time that I wasn't at work, I was just like, again, I was in this place of like, I feel so bad. Is this what life is? Like, I just kept, it was like, I couldn't stop kind of thinking about it that way. Do you know what I mean? Like, is
Hmm.
this what life is? I feel so bad. And, you know, and it was similar to like, okay, when I was a child, this feeling of unworthiness and lack of value like drove me. But it's like now I got to this point where I have everything. And what really started to like drive me and kind of bubble up in me was like, I have everything that everybody says is important. I have everything I thought I wanted. And here I am. It's like I couldn't kind of get out of my kind of, it was like I tried to numb myself out in a way and keep going. But it was like there. It was like there being like, no, something's off. Something's off.
Disillusionment.
Yeah.
So what would you say was the breaking point for you? What did that look like?
Yeah, so basically, I was confused because I felt like, okay, I have everything and here I am so unhappy. Like, this is my fault. This is me not
Hmm.
being positive or whatever, being ungrateful, whatever. um, but it didn't end. It didn't stop. And it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter if
Wow.
I did more pro bono work or if I tried to do a
Hmm.
different type of legal work or if I worked with different partners. It's like this wasn't going away. And so um, finally, it was just like, I just felt like something has to give. It's like something has to give. And this job is the biggest thing in my life. And so I feel like again, it was confusion. Like part of me was like, well, maybe it is the job because, you know, I do work a lot. Maybe if I didn't work as much,
Hmm.
maybe I would feel different, you know? But then there's this other part of me that was like, it's not the job. You know, but at the same time, the job was the biggest thing in my life. So again, I wasn't coming from this point of great clarity. I wasn't. And it took me, quite frankly, it took me years to get up the courage to leave that job. And
Hmm.
when I left that job, I left without a plan. Like, listen, I had a great resume. I could have gotten another job. But there was this part of me that was like, if I go to another job, different faces, different places, I'm going to feel the same. There was just something in me that was like, I need to leave. I need to leave this. I can't think clearly here. I can't, you know, I don't know what I need to do, but I need to leave.
Hmm.
Something has to change. Something has to give. And so, yeah. And so I left it was really, it wasn't like I had a breaking moment. It was like,
Yeah.
I
It was a
finally,
build up, a crescendo.
it was like I finally got up the courage to be like, no, I'm doing this. And there were all of these thoughts in my mind, like, this is crazy.
Hmm. Yeah.
This is the worst decision ever. If you leave this job, you're a failure
Mm.
because other people are still here. Why do you need to leave? Why can't you just keep doing it? If you leave this job, you will have no money. If you leave this job, you'll end up a bum on the street. If you leave this job, because I didn't know anything else that I liked to do. It's like, if you leave this job, you'll never have another job again. Like, what are you going to do? You know, it's like this barrage of reasons not to leave.
So the stakes were somewhat high.
Yeah, somewhat high.
um, yeah. How long, you said it took you years to muster up the courage to make that decision. Can you speak more to that? Because I think that is something that I think many people could relate to, and maybe some listeners are at different stages of that experience themselves. What would you say in terms of what your own process looked like, and maybe what you would say to someone out there who feels similarly depleted and maybe numbed out and maybe confused and desperate feeling and not knowing what else they possibly could do? That's a big question, but
Yeah. So yeah, it did take me years. I mean, I stayed in that job for 6 years. I was on an 8-year partnership track. So I was getting really close to getting to that place. Um, and I became unhappy after my first year. So I literally thought about leaving for 5 years.
yeah.
And what I would offer to other people is I had all of these reasons why I had to stay in that job. And ultimately, what I was having was like, they were thought errors. I was thinking thoughts that weren't actually true. And those thoughts were keeping me trapped in that job. When in truth, I could have left that job. I did not have to stay in that job as many years as I did. Now, I don't like regret being in that job. I think it's benefited me. But what I would also offer, though, is that, if you're feeling bad, something's going on. Like, it's those feelings are telling you something. It could be, again, it could be thoughts that you're thinking. It could actually be like, that job wasn't me expressing my own unique creativity and my gifts and talents. It wasn't. That job was not the job for me. It is for some people. Totally is. I can think of people right now who that job is totally for. It was not for me. And so what I've found on this journey, though, is that I've been on is that, we all have our own unique creative expressions in the world. We all have our own gifts and talents. And we do have like a path and purpose in this world. And it feels so good. When you get on that, you know it, because it feels so good. And so if you're in a situation where you're feeling bad, especially too, or if you're feeling depleted, like I felt so depleted, like something's off and you can have a different experience. And part of it too is just understanding, like, again, it's like we treat this as it's like if it's normal. You go, you sacrifice, you work
And everyone
hard.
else is doing it, right?
That's the thing. So this is such a good point. So I'm in this firm, right? And it's almost like it feels a little bit cultish in a way, right? Because it's like everyone else is doing it. Everyone else is working so hard. Everyone else is depleting themselves. They're coming back from trial. They look like sick as anything. They've lost 20 pounds, because it was so difficult. And it's just like you're in this environment. It's like everybody's doing that. And that even makes it feel like normal. And like when you're in law school and you're in this environment where people are working so hard and they leave an exam and they're out in the hallway crying because they think they didn't do well and they're completely like losing it over, this exam or whatever. And it's like you're in these environments and you just think that's normal and toe the line. Like if you do something different, then you're like outside of that norm. Or if you want something different, then you're outside of that norm. Or if you are like, wow, this feels really bad to me and I'm really exhausted. It's kind of like, well, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do this? Or
yeah. So what do you attribute to finally being able to make that decisive, cutting the cord of all that was, all that you knew, all that society said was good? What do you attribute it to?
So I attribute
finally making that decision after 5 years of suffering.
Oh, for me to leave?
Yeah.
What do I attribute that to? I'm not entirely sure what I attribute that decision to. It was really a decision, like I said, made in not a lot of clarity. But now looking back, what I would say is, so what I've found is that the truth of who we are is there. In many instances, though, it's like it's been hidden from us, but it's still there and it's always speaking to us. We know the path for us. We know who we are. And when I look back now, it was like that the truth of who I was speaking to me, was telling me, get out. Like, there is something different for you. This isn't it. Leave. You'll be fine. Go. You know what I mean? So it was like, I didn't know that though. I didn't even know that there was something in me that I could even, like none of this is like, it was like, but it was like, I had this very strong pull of like, I have to change something. I don't have clarity what that is, but I just know something has to change. And it was like, even when I remember what I was wearing, I remember walking down the hall to the partner's office to tell him I was leaving. Like, the whole thing felt out of body to me. Like, I am doing the dumbest, stupidest, craziest thing right now. And even after I did it, I was like, I should not have done that. Like, this is such a mistake,
Huh. How calculated was it? It's not like you impulsively decided, all right, I'm out of here one day. No?
Oh, no, it wasn't. No, I kept like, today I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Something has to change in my life. I'm going to do it. This is the day I'm going to do it. And I remember being on the phone with my husband, because I had made this decision. I'd finally made this decision. I'm going to do this today. And I remember being on the phone with my husband, like right before, because the partner, I went to talk to him, but he was like busy. And so then I went back to my office, and I remember being on the phone with my husband. I was like, I literally, I cannot do this. This is the most crazy, like, I cannot do this. And then the partner showed up in my office, like, yeah, you wanted to talk to me. It's like, okay, I guess I'm going to do this.
What did your husband have to say about the whole thing? How did he feel about it? Do you remember?
Yeah, he completely supported me.
That's great.
He completely supported me. Yeah. Even though it was going to be a major, major adjustment, financial hit.
Yeah.
To us. Yeah. He supported me.
Okay. So you quit.
Yeah.
Then what?
Yeah. So
then what happened?
Then what happened? So what happened after I left was,
did they try to keep you? Did they like try to entice you to stay?
So interestingly enough, a year before I quit, I told one of the partners who was my mentor at the time, I just said, I'm really unhappy and I don't know why. I told him that. I finally told him that. And I was like, I think I might need to leave. And the firm did. They came to me and they said, what will it take to make you stay? And of course I was like so flattered by that, because again, I was like, oh, I actually matter in the world, so flattered by that. And of course you can always think of something. It's like, well, I can think of something will make me stay. So that did happen. Yeah.
What was it? What did you think of that? What was it? I need 4 more weeks of vacation. I don't know. What did you say that would?
I wanted to work less hours.
Yeah.
I wanted to bill less hours. That's what I wanted.
And they honored that?
They did. And I was shocked by the whole thing, but they did. They honored it. And so
significantly less hours?
I wanted to work significantly less hours. Yeah. And I did, my hours did reduce that next year, and I still found myself being, but here's the thing. I didn't realize at the time I was doing something that wasn't expressive of who I was. And so it was just, that was going to deplete me no matter what. You could reduce it. And even though my hours were reduced, it was like my life still revolved around it in a sense, because you can work less hours, but when clients need something, they need something, right? So it's like, I was still constantly I couldn't just go do stuff. It wasn't like I was just like, I'll work less hours. I'll be in the office at this time and not this time. Pretty much in that job, you're kind of on call 24/7. So, but yeah, so I did try that. And at the time
it didn't bring much relief?
No, it really didn't.
Interesting.
It didn't bring much relief. And 2, it made me again feel like it just made me feel like I wasn't pulling my weight in a way. Like, everybody else is working way more hours than me. Why shouldn't I work more hours? So
you felt guilt, additional guilt.
I felt guilt. And then the thing too was at the end of that year, so I did it. It was like, let's try this for a year. Let's see what happens. At the end of that year, it was like, you're doing great. And I was getting these great reviews on my work. And it was like, okay, let's bring your hours back up. Like, you're, yeah, because it was like,
that's a bait and switch.
Well, I mean, it wasn't like they were forcing me, but it was like, if you were questioning whether or not this was for you, you don't need to question that anymore. Like, look,
Right.
you're doing great work. Like
Wow.
you're like, this is something for you. Do you know what I mean? It was it
Yeah.
was like that. And so,
That's hard to like, it's
yeah,
hard to honor um your own sense of yourself when you're getting such contradictory reinforcement from the
yeah,
outside. So I want to
yeah,
I want to acknowledge you for that, because it's hard enough, to listen to that inner voice, uh, you know, in our culture in general. But when your environment is so overwhelmingly, um, rewarding you and stroking your ego and like,
yeah,
telling, sending you this message of this is what you were built for,
yeah.
that so
Yeah, and I really when I went to talk to that partner before I decided to leave, I thought what I was actually going to do was be like, yeah, let's just increase my hours. You know what I mean? Because again, it does feel really good when you get those people telling you like you're doing such a good job, and you get all these like good reviews, and again, it was like, and I felt like even though I was working less hours, I was still so involved in that firm. It was like, why not just, yeah, I'll just increase my
right.
hours, whatever. And then I ended up leaving. So it was kind of like yeah, I don't, it was kind of interesting because I was actually thinking at the time of like, well, maybe, okay, yeah, let's just, like, this is where I am. This is what I do. You know what I mean? I'm good
Mm,
at it. I worked my whole life for it.
right.
They like me. They appreciate me. Look what they've done for me. You
So
know,
so you can't really speak to what finally like instigated that decision to leave.
I really can't. I mean,
Wow.
I had wanted to leave for years. Like for
Right.
years, there had been this thing in me telling me, like, no, this.
Did you
I
feel any
felt bad.
relief once you made the decision? Because you talked about how you said, "Oh, I just I made the stupidest mistake." I mean, those weren't your words, but like you
Yeah,
berated yourself. You said, "Oh, I
yeah.
shouldn't have done that." Did any relief accompany that decision?
No,
No.
no, legitimately, no. I was
Wow.
like, oh my goodness,
What have I done?
what have I done? And yeah.
So then what happens?
So I leave this job, right? And again, I'm in a confused state, but there was this part of me that thought, give me 2 weeks away from this job, from the stress, from the pressure, from the constant emails and calls and all the things. And like, I'll have more clarity, right? Like, I'll feel better. I'll have more clarity. I'll have more energy, and I'll figure something out. That did not happen.
Hmm.
So I actually was really surprised by what happened when I left, because so when I left that job, the first thing that happened was I realized I was in a really poor state of health. It was like when that stress went away, when I stopped operating from that adrenaline, my body showed me the state that it was really in,
Hmm.
and it was not good. Even though I had tried to take really good care of myself while I was working, I was not in a good state health wise. Like, I went from being like operating at this super high level, like doing all of this, super high level work, doing, so many things all day, every day, to feeling like I couldn't even drive somewhere. Like, my whole
Hmm.
body ached. I just felt completely like, I felt like just like my body had just been leveled. And then the other thing that happened was like I left that job of my own free will, and I accomplished everything I set out to accomplish. So you'd think that I would have some level of like, okay, like, I'm not doing this now, but I did it. And so I feel kind of good about myself because, like, I did it. And if I want to go back and do it, I can go back and do it. It's not like,
It's not an
it was
irreversible decision.
it wasn't irreversible. But when that job went away, it was like every shred of worth and value that I thought I had, it just went right with it. And so I found myself in this physically bad state, this physically unhealthy state. And mentally, I would say it was even worse because I felt like absolutely nothing. It was like, if I don't have that job, I am nothing. And my whole life, it was like, yeah, I didn't have that job when I was in fifth grade, but it was like, I always had this, like, but I'm working towards that. I'm
Right.
going to get there. And it was always this, but it was like when that went away, it was just, I mean, I just felt like I was just absolutely nothing. And so I found myself in this state. And so I made the decision. I'm going to give everything I have, all my time, all my resources, all my energy, everything to finding answers. Can I heal my body? And can I feel differently about myself? Can I feel differently about life? Can I have a different experience of life? And so that's what I did. I mean, I read, I researched, I trained in different modalities. I practiced different modalities. I saw all sorts of different healers. I went on retreats. I took classes. I took courses and programs. I trained myself in a number of modalities. I did all sorts of things for my health. Like I bought a sauna. I did floats. I did cleanses. I did different diets. And so yeah, I made this my full-time job.
I have a question now. Would you call that new mission of yours, right? Because it sounds like you applied yourself with that similar hard driving, relentless, so would you call that phase of your life hard work or effort, and why?
So that is a really good question. I think ultimately, so here's the thing, like at the time, I felt like almost like I had to do it. But what I realize now is I was actually really interested in it. It did actually really interest me because I was trying to find answers. I was actually doing things that really interested me, researching things that interested me.
So this process, I'm sorry to interrupt.
But from the state I was in, I was in such a bad state mentally and physically that it was like, it didn't seem like passion was driving me as much as need was driving me at the time. Yeah.
So this pursuit, it almost sounds like both energized and depleted you. Do I have that right? Or not?
I think it more energized me, but I think it was like I was coming from this state of just such massive depletion that it was hard to even kind of see that. And it was also hard for me to see the path for me coming from that state. It's like I was trying to I'm trying to find my way. I'm trying to figure things out. I don't know who I am. I don't know what it is that I really like. I don't know what it is that I'm passionate about. All I know is I'm in a place where I need to can I help myself here?
Right. And you weren't entering from a place of health and strength. You were entering this new journey from a depleted state.
Yeah.
But you genuinely were interested in these things. And so that helped feed you motivation wise.
I think, and I didn't realize it at the time. I did not know this is what I was going to end up doing. I did not know this was for me, it was just like, I gotta, can I help myself here? Can I get my health back? Can I feel different about life? It wasn't at the time. I don't think that I thought that I was actually that interested in it or passionate about it, but I was, though. It's like, I just didn't realize it. And I think too, that was what drove me to be like, I want to find answers. I need to find answers, where some people might not be interested in trying all those different things to find those answers.
And it sounds like some of the things, or maybe a lot of the things that you tried, were fairly unconventional things. Like the conventional American prescription for, you're not feeling well, you should go to a doctor and maybe you should go get therapy and be on antidepressants. Like that's the conventional prescription. And I'm not, by the way, saying I'm a believer in whatever works, and I'm also a believer that if you're suffering, keep trying things. Yes. Look for what works for you, and don't give up, and keep trying things, and understand that it's going to be a process. Maybe you'll get crazy lucky and the first thing you try helps you. But if it doesn't, don't give up. There's so many other possibilities and options, and you have to figure out and find what is going to work for and help you. Did you try conventional methods first, or did you, how did you even decide what modalities to explore?
Yeah, I did not try any conventional methods. And so I do think that kind of speaks to, there was something in me that was kind of calling me in a sense, that was guiding me in a sense to really to what it was that I was interested in, to what it was that I was passionate about. And I agree with you, try different things. There isn't, but for me, I didn't. That was not what I was, quite frankly, I never considered it. I had been involved in the conventional, I had a condition. I've had a number of conditions. I've had a number of medical health problems and whatnot since I was in second grade, really.
Wow.
And then, since second grade was the start of one, then middle school, then college. And I had engaged with the medical system a lot to try to help me with those. And so I had my own experience with that. And I was never given a solution from them. And then also too, my dad died of cancer. And so I watched him I had spent a lot of time in hospitals with him and in the medical kind of world with him. And I'm not criticizing that world at all, but it was just, I knew from my own experience that I didn't get the results that I really wanted. And so for me, it wasn't really in my it was like, to me, that wasn't going to be the answer or the solution. So I think that's why I went, just because of my own prior experience. And again, I'm not saying there isn't value in that profession. Of course there is. But from my personal experience, were they able to help me with the things that I was dealing with? And I had enough life experience to know that they didn't. And so I did go a different direction. Yeah.
Thank you very much for elucidating on that and explaining that. And that also is really illuminating in terms of, it sounds like in some capacity, your body was sending you signals and messages throughout your life. Even as a very young person, something was awry.
Absolutely. 100%, no question.
But no one made any connection.
Nope.
Right.
I mean, it was like, in second grade was the start of kind of my health problems. And I remember going to the hospital, having all these terribly invasive tests done, and then basically being like, we don't know. And then, I had that issue that issue that I had that started in second grade. I have healed, just to clarify, every single issue that I had is now gone.
Wow.
I have healed all of them.
That's stunning.
And
if you're willing to mention what some of those were, but that's entirely up to you.
Yeah. So I'll mention the one in second grade. Basically, I had chronic stomach issues. Like every time I'd eat, my stomach would get like really upset. And so I finally got to the point where it's like, and I had seen I had all of those tests done in second grade. And then I went to see, when I was in like college and after college, I'd seen, I forget the names of the different doctors that deal with like the intestines and the stomach. And I had all these other more invasive tests done and tried all these different, I forget all the things that they gave me or to try to help me so I could just, eat and my stomach not get upset. And then I finally got to the point where it's like, oh, that's just what happens when I eat.
Right.
That's normal.
That's normal.
It became normal for me. When it happens from second grade, it's like, well, that's just normal.
Wow. It's so fascinating because, what it sounds like is that still to this day, the medical world focuses on the body, right? And focuses on the biology of things. And that certainly is that's important. That's certainly, there's a place for that without question. But what about, more holistically, what's going on in your life? What is your environment like? What does your emotional health look like? What does your mental health look like? Like, it seems to me that if you don't address the core issue, then the best you can do is kind of like put band-aids on how on how the things are manifesting. But if you're not addressing things at their core, they're going to reemerge.
That's absolutely right. And things just got worse for me. I won't go into, I had 3 major things. I won't go into all of them. But I was told that they were all chronic and I'd have them for the rest of my life. And one of them got way worse after I left my job. My health actually got way worse after I left my job, which we haven't really talked about, but it did. And one of the conditions I had got way worse, and it basically put me in pain and discomfort basically around the clock. Like I didn't know if I'd be able to sleep at night. I was just in this constant, like, can I get through this next moment? And yeah, and so, but, and then along the way too, I have had other conditions, like, but you're right. And I know this now, my beingness was speaking to me. It was telling me, like, my body, like, your body's your best friend. Like, my body was telling me, like, something's off, something's off. Like, you're not being who you are. You're not being who you are. And when you're not being who you are, you're not going to feel good. Why? Because you're outside of your fundamental nature. You're not being you. And so I was told that these things I'd have them for the rest of my life. And I was on antibiotics too for years, like just straight. Like I was on antibiotics for just all the time.
Wow.
For years. And anyway, what I would offer to people is your body is communicating to you about you and about your state. And when you do when you really tap into who you are and you be who you are, your body will totally change. Like it's so funny. I forget that I had these things now. Like we talk about it. So I kind of like, I remember, or like sometimes I'll remember, like I'll be talking to like a client or something. And they'll be saying something like, oh yeah, well, I used to have, it's like, I don't even, because our natural state, our fundamental state is not one of disease. It isn't. That is not who we are. And when we tap into who we are and we be who we are, then we're not in those states. And the thing about not being in them is, what I can tell you from my own experience is, it feels so normal and natural that it's like you forget. Oh yeah, I used to not really be able to eat without my stomach getting upset. Or I spent like a full year being in massive like pain for most of the time. Or it's like it's like I don't even really, it's like, because when you step into your natural state, into your fundamental state again, it's like it's natural. It's natural. And so
maybe
it
encourages the body's own healing functions.
Yeah, and you and your body it's like you are your body is you, it's expressing you all the time. And so it's like when you step into you and your fundamental nature, which is not one of disease, this idea that like this is normal, no it isn't. This idea that being sick is normal and being in states of disease isn't, no it isn't. And so when you step into your fundamental nature, your body steps into it with you, and your body expresses that too. And so that's what I've watched my body do.
Right. So it makes sense, especially with that explanation, why you didn't, explore the sort of conventional treatments for, say, depression, exhaustion, what have you. And you sought out, other modalities. And I'd be interested to hear, to whatever extent you care to, I'd be interested to hear you speak to, you already mentioned a couple of these, but what things did you explore, and what ultimately helped you, but did you was everything kind of a dud until you got to what helped you, or were there kind of promising looking things along the way?
Yeah, so it was like I tried all of these things, and really, I found myself in worse health. It's like I tried for a year and a half, I tried all these different things that in theory seemed really good and that had worked for other people.
Right.
And so when I'm not getting results from these things, it was so disheartening. I really got into this state of, oh my goodness, what I am searching for does not exist. Like, this is all life is, and it is not good, generally speaking, right? And our bodies just deteriorate, and I'm watching my body deteriorate now, and there's nothing I can do about it, and our bodies just go into these states of disease. And so, all the things I tried, it was like they kind of gave me momentary hits of like maybe feeling a little bit better here or there. But ultimately, my health did appear to get worse. And of course, my emotional state also got worse because then it was like, oh, again, this thing I'm searching for doesn't exist. I've left everything. I've walked away from everything, you know, with this. Like when I was in my job, it was like I did have this like little shred of like, if I left, if I tried something different, I could have a different experience, right? But then I went and I tried something different and my experience seemed to get worse. So then it really took me to the place of, oh, I don't, like the answers, like what I'm seeking doesn't exist. And so yeah, I mean, maybe all those things I tried, like maybe they had some beneficial impact. I would offer that it's not that the things I tried weren't beneficial, that they didn't have and carried benefit. But one of the things that I've realized is we're our own unique beings. And what works for one person isn't necessarily the thing that's going to work for another person. What really matters is that we're tapped into who we are and we're following, like, and we're coming into and experiencing the things that are going to work for us. And that's not what I was doing. What I was doing was like listening to what all of these other people were saying and then going and doing those things and then wanting the result that these other people got, but I wasn't them.
Right. Which is natural, right? I mean, you know, if something works for someone else, like you want in on that.
Yeah.
So did any part of you blame yourself? Like there must be something wrong with me. These things helped other people, or did you just feel like everything's a sham? These things don't actually work.
No, of course I blamed myself. That's kind of like the thing that I do.
Your default,
I was just like, but I was like, but it made me feel so hopeless. Like, you know, I'm literally reading scientific studies. This thing works. It does this. And I'm like, why don't I feel better? Why do I feel worse? You know? And you know, I'd read these things too about these different modalities, and I trained in a number of them. I trained myself in a number of them. I practiced them on other people too, because I wanted to see, is this working? You know, is like what kind of result are you getting from this? And so yeah, it was just it was like, you know, it was challenging for these things not to kind of give me the thing that I thought they would give, and they did seem so legitimate, and I don't think that they're illegitimate. I think they are. But here's the thing, we live in this experience where there are so many options, right? So many options. And we, even if we look too at, like, you know, experts, what they're saying, you'll have one expert saying do this, then you'll have another expert saying doing this. It's not that one of them is right or one of them is wrong. There are certain things for certain people, and it's really about what I've found is tapping into you, listening to you. That will guide you to the thing that is for you. And I was so removed from listening to me.
Wow.
That I was just listening to, like, well, what are
everyone
other
else
people saying? Yeah.
Wow. I'm so glad that you kept searching, because this story does have a very happy ending to it. Not ending, but because it's ongoing. But there is a very happy turn of events. So why don't we get into that? And how did you discover Kundalini Yoga? Was it just one of the other things that someone suggested you try, or how did you even become aware of it? And what was your experience with it like?
Yeah, so I really had never heard of it. And one day I don't know how I came across it, but I found a class online, and it was kind of like, I'll try class. You know, like I had done yoga for years, and it was interesting too, because I was doing yoga one morning, as I always do, because I made it like, it was like, okay, I do yoga. That's what I do. I do yoga every morning. And I remember one morning being like, why am I doing this every morning? I'm not saying yoga is bad, but I really was not in a good state of health. I was not where I wanted to be. And I remember just somehow finding, or this class coming to me, however you want to say it, and me really noticing it and being like, I'm going to try that. And so I tried a class, and the class seemed really odd to me. I thought we were doing really weird things, and I was just like, oh my goodness, this is what my life is now. Like, just like
this is what it's come to.
This is what it's come to. But after that class, I felt different. Like I felt different, and it was enough difference that I like noticed it, and I was like, I feel different. And so I, I took another class. I'm like, I feel good. Like something in this is really speaking to me. And then I took more classes, and the more classes I took, the better I started to feel. Like it was like the aches and pains in my body started to go away. I started to feel energized. I started to feel clear-minded. I started to feel inspired. And so finding Kundalini Yoga, it was this turning point for me. And it was really me just kind of following this trail of like, I'm doing this and I'm feeling good and I'm going to keep doing it. And the more I did it, the better I felt.
How long of a period of time would you say it took for you to feel significantly different and better?
So after every class, I felt different. Like after every class, I felt good. It was almost like I had this like, I don't feel maybe that good when I woke up this morning, but I'm going to go do Kundalini Yoga and I know I'm going to feel better after that class. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of like that.
I love that.
In terms of the length of time, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, because it was this like, it was like an unfolding, but at the same time, it was like when you have those moments in class where you do feel really good, it shows you like, if I feel really good in this moment, that means I can feel really good.
Right.
If I feel clear-minded in this moment, that means I'm actually probably clear-minded. You know, if I'm doing this meditation and I'm feeling inspired, or I'm chanting this mantra and I'm feeling like kind of moved to the depths of me, it's almost like it's like showing me this is possible. I can feel this way. And so it really was like this beautiful, I feel like it saved me in the sense in that I always knew, because, it wasn't like I just started doing Kundalini Yoga and my life just changed. It was like I was just kind of up, down, but it was like I always knew I can go do this class. And during that class, even though they may be challenging, I'm going to feel different. And after that class, I'm going to feel better. And then it's like it's like it kind of like that, it's like the momentum almost kind of catches in a way. And then it kind of keeps going. And so I think I did Kundalini Yoga for, I don't even know if I did it for a full year before I entered teacher training. Because when I started to kind of feel differently, I sought out teacher training, not because I thought I would teach. I just was like, what is this thing having this impact and why? And then, it's when I entered teacher training too, that again, these things, just the more you do it, it's like it builds and it builds in you. And really what Kundalini Yoga is doing is it's tapping you into you. And the more it tapped me into me, the better that I felt.
Well, I love hearing about that. We spoke a little bit before we started recording this conversation, and I shared with you that I had some experience with Kundalini Yoga. And I would say that now, unfortunately, COVID shut down the studio that I was going to and attending classes at. I went at the invitation of a friend and immediately liked it. Now, what's kind of interesting is the timing of things. If I had maybe been walking by the yoga studio and witnessed kind of what was going on in class, and if this had been, maybe a year before I actually went to the class, I might have been, I might have said, yeah, absolutely not. Like, not for me.
Yeah.
What is that? Like,
yeah.
But I went, with a friend and had a absolutely positive experience, and, was open-minded about it. My experience, it was much better than any other sort of maybe conventional yoga class, or I had tried different styles of yoga over the years, and I had never really had a good experience in a yoga class. I always felt very self-conscious. Am I doing this posture right? It was not, I did have good experiences later with working at home with a DVD where I didn't have that same kind of self-consciousness of being in a class and whatnot. I did benefit from that. But the experience I had in a Kundalini yoga class was unique. And part of what was unique about it was the structure of it. It blended a lot of different things. It wasn't just a series of poses that you moved through, although certainly there was that, but it was a combination of things. And there was chanting and there was even singing. And, but the energy was so delightful. I did not like think this is really bizarre and weird and cultish and I want out of here. I didn't have that feeling at all. I was just like, this is fun. I don't really know what I'm doing, but this is kind of fun. and and when I would leave the class, without exception, now I did maybe a dozen or slightly more classes before, again, COVID hit and put an end to it. But I would say that after every class, I for sure felt good. I mean, for sure. Like, and I remember it was always like a revelation. I would think to myself, oh, right. Breathing. Right. That's good. Like I wouldn't have thought to do that in a conscious, intentional way if it weren't for the structure of the class. Oh, stretching my body. Of course. Genius. Genius. I wouldn't have thought to do that all day if it weren't for the structure of this class. And of course, it was, again, the combination of things. There was also a very relaxing where she would use the gong at the end, the teacher, and it would put you in this unbelievably relaxed state after you had, worked fairly hard doing the postures and whatnot and the poses. You got this immensely relaxing experience that I just adored. And so, every at the end of every class, I felt better, and I probably would have continued with it. But I love the message behind, and this kind of harkens back to earlier in the conversation where we talked about really paying attention and noticing when things are energizing you and when things are depleting you, really making a point of noticing that. And I love the way you described, if I can have this feeling of clarity of mind, if I can feel good in my body in this moment, then that means it's possible. Then that means it's like, it can happen. And so naturally you want more of that. But I think such an important message in what you shared is, first of all, being open-minded and trying things and not giving up, right? If the first few things you try don't work, and find what works for you, what speaks to you, and pay attention and really honor and notice how you feel, not how you're supposed to feel, not how everyone else is feeling that's doing it, but how you feel about it. This is a message I am continuously learning throughout my life in so many different contexts. It really matters to honor and pay attention to your experience. And because you can't do anything about it until you notice. And then when you notice, you can say, okay, more of that, less, more of this, less of that. So I think that your story is really powerful and inspiring. And I hope that people listening will, whether they pursue Kundalini Yoga or whatever else, that they keep that in mind and to think about and to notice the things that do make them feel better. For me, one of my go-to thing is hiking. I know that pretty much without exception, however I happen to be feeling, if I go for a hike, I'm going to feel better. I just know I have had so many experiences of this that it's a no-brainer for me. It's not, it's just obvious. So it sounds like Kundalini Yoga is that way for you. So you got your teacher training, you did the teacher training, and what did that entail? How many hours and what was that like?
Oh, so that was a number of months. It was actually quite an intense training. I think it lasted it was almost a year. And I trained with, interestingly enough, a Duke professor was my teacher trainer. She was a professor of dance at Duke, and so I thought it was really cool that it was almost like, it's kind of always like, why did I end up at Duke? Or why did I end up, it's like now here I am with this Duke professor teaching me Kundalini Yoga. And I actually taught a Kundalini Yoga class at Duke, which was really interesting. But so it was almost a year, I think, in training. And it was really an immersive experience. And it really was I think now too, there's so many things where people can get trained online and different things or whatever. This was not that. This was a training really it was about really me or, us training ourselves. It was really, I really found it was me stepping more and more into who I was, and in a very like intense way in a sense. So it was, and the teacher that I had, I guess different teachers can do it differently, but she basically said like, if you come to my training, it's going to be like, you're really going to be immersed in this, and you're really going to, I require more than is what is required to get this. But yeah, it was this really just immersive, beautiful, kind of all-encompassing experience that I was in being trained in this. And yeah, it was like me stepping more and more into me. And it was just a really beautiful experience for me. And again, I didn't know I was going to teach it. It was really just for me I did it just like, I want to know more about this thing that is transforming my life. And when I went into the training and I started to understand it more, which quite frankly, I don't think we totally understand why Kundalini Yoga is so effective. I really feel like our modern science is catching up to what the yogis knew. But what we do understand of it, and as I did understand it more, it was like, oh, this is why this is having such an impact on me. Oh, this makes so much sense. And so it was like, it went from this experiential, like, oh, this is really benefiting me, to me really starting to understand, and this is why.
And can you maybe give an example of an epiphany that you had in that regard?
Yeah, so one of the things, just as an example, is Kundalini Yoga. One of the things it does, so it's a very dynamic practice, as you know. It's working all levels of your beingness. So it is working your physical body, it is working your mind, it is working you on an emotional level, it's working you on an energetic level. So it's really treating us as these full beings. Like, we are these dynamic and complex beings. We're not just physical. Kundalini Yoga is addressing all parts of us in the practice. And so just as an example, though, it's like, one of the things when we're looking at the physical body, one of the things Kundalini Yoga does is it works the nervous system. And I had never thought about my nervous system. I had never thought, like, I need a strong, balanced, and calibrated nervous system. And so it was like, one of the things that I learned is that, so in this kind of journey that I was on, it was like, I wanted these certain things in my life, right? Like, I wanted to feel good, but it was like, that just never was, it wasn't happening for me. And what did happen though, a couple times, is like, things would come into my experience that seemed really good. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I want. They would go away. And I'm like, what is happening here? And like, I'm listening to all these people talking about, you can manifest whatever you want and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't think I can, because these things seem to come and then they go, and I don't know what's happening. And so what I didn't understand is, if your nervous system is used to like you feeling bad, that's what you're going to experience. Why? Because it can't handle you feeling good.
Is that a homeostasis phenomenon? It wants to return to what it knows and what it's used to?
It's like what it's calibrated to.
Right.
It's like you're calibrated to kind of like feeling bad. That's what your body's used to. That's like your norm. And so what I didn't understand is like, that's what I was used to. I was used to feeling bad. And people think like, oh, I need a strong nervous system so I can handle like the challenges of life. There's truth to that.
Right.
We also actually need a nervous system that can handle our greatness, that can handle us feeling so good. And it was like, I didn't have that. Most of my life, I hadn't felt good. I mean, talk about a nervous system that wasn't used to feeling good. Like, that's what I had. And so when I started to work my nervous system, though, it was like I got to the place where good things would come into my experience and they would stay. This was such a revelation for me. And it was like, up until that point, up until I really started to work my nervous system again, it was like good things would come, but they would go. And it was so like, oh my goodness, what is happening? And so again, like Kundalini Yoga, it's working on the nervous system. And this was something that I had just never thought to work on. And also too, when we're talking about a strong, balanced, and calibrated nervous system, it's like what we're seeing, I feel like, in this experience is people aren't, it's not like they're just emotional. It's like they're commotional. It's like things are happening, but and they're on this wave. They're up, they're down, they're all over. It's hard to handle anything. Is kind of, I think kind of what we're seeing. And again, like when you've got this strong nervous system, it's almost like, I got this. Whatever challenge is in front of me, I've got this. I will rise to it. I know I can do that. It's like this stability and this strength. You're not commotional. You're not just all over the place. Life's not just throwing you around. Because, I mean, let's face it, there are challenges. We're going to have challenges in our life, and it's can we rise to those? And so it was that as well. You know, instead of me feeling just like this week, I'm getting thrown around by life, I started to feel like, one, I can handle feeling good. And two, I can handle whatever is in front of me. I'm not just getting thrown around by life. And it's like, I feel like I've got it. Okay, I have a challenge. I got that, you know? And so it's just, this is just one little example of like,
it's a great one. I mean, I love that idea of commotional. And then if you have this centering practice, then you feel that you can handle whatever comes your way instead of being thrown around by life's, events. You know, you can come back to yourself. It's centering, it's strengthening. And not only can you handle all the chaos and commotion, but you can handle joy. There's room for joy.
Yes.
I'm interested to hear, I want to ask you, just very practically speaking. So you took about a year and a half of time to explore these different things. You found Kundalini Yoga. You finally found something that worked for you. It helped you. It made you feel better. And you continued exploring it, so much so that you even did your teacher training. I have to ask the question of the practicalities. Okay, so you left your career in law. Perhaps you had a decent cushion of savings that afforded you, but how did you make the transition from corporate attorney to solopreneur, business person, from a sort of practical and financial standpoint? In other words, what changes maybe did you need to make in your lifestyle, and what did that transition look like for you?
Yeah, so I did have savings when I left my job, but so money was a big issue for me, and why I was afraid to leave, because I had a home that was, I had a mortgage on it that was, consistent with what I was making. And so I was super nervous about that. And at the time, my husband, he was really doing something that was him following his passion. And so it wasn't something that was really super lucrative. And so I really looked at this like, how is this ever going to work? And that's really why I kind of said, like, I'll give myself 2 weeks and
Right.
because then I've got to get back so I can keep this house and all the things. And what was really interesting to me is how things worked out. And I really think that when we make these decisions where we decide, like, I'm going to follow me, it's like we're supported in that. And so interesting things happened along the way. Like, so I had this savings, and at the time though, my husband was living in a different city. So I've got this house in the city that I'm working in, and it's kind of like I just didn't want to let it go. I just loved it so much. But it was kind of like, well, I'm not working anymore, and my husband lives in this other city. So I, brought in a real estate agent just to be like, so what do you think? And it was like, the price she told us we could sell this house for, like, blew my mind. I was like, what? Like, we had redone it. We had remodeled it. And yeah, I guess like she just was like, this remodel is incredible and you're going to get so much money for this. And so I ended up selling that house, and I made a lot of money on that house. And then, so now my savings has even increased. And then on top of that, it was so interesting. There were these very specific things that I wanted in a house. Like, having a beautiful house was just like important to me. And so I go to the city that my husband's working in, and this house is on the market that it basically has everything I want. And it's, I mean, it's so much less than what we were paying before. Like, it basically had a mortgage that was like totally doable. So bought that house. So then we have this like really very, very small mortgage in terms of what we used to have. And then on top of it, my husband got a better job. So it was like these things happened that I didn't know were going to happen, but that were like supporting me. Like it, like it's almost like, I almost feel like it was like almost like this, like, we got you. Like it was a really interesting thing, because so much of my life I had never ever felt that way. It always felt like if I'm going to do something, like if I'm going to get something, I've got to do it myself, you know, and I've got to make sure, you know, and have plan A, B, C, D, and have savings and have all of this stuff. And so it was so interesting. It was like I was really supported in that, and things just worked out, and it gave me this space that I didn't think I would have. Like, I had a year and a half where I was trying all these things and nothing was working. And then I found Kundalini Yoga. And then I had another full year of the teacher training. And then I had more time even after that before I developed my programs, and before I started, you know, realizing like, oh, I can actually coach people and benefit people. And like it's not like I had this plan for this business. It's like it unfolded, but it was like I felt like I was really financially supported in that unfolding in ways that, quite frankly, surprised me.
Wow. That's amazing. And I'm thinking of a previous guest I had on this podcast who used the phrase, the universe has my back.
Mm.
And I remember, and I said, that's beautiful. And I'd like to sign up for that. But like you, like, my life experience hasn't necessarily always been shown me that, or it can be confusing. Maybe it has the whole time had my back and I haven't realized it. Like, there's that. Because in certain ways, I mean, here I am, I'm still here. My needs have been met, so in that sense, for sure. But I think that I've, similar to you, been driven by this sense of it's all on me. I have to figure it all out. I have to come up with everything. And personally, I've had difficulty with this sense of trusting that all will be well, that the universe will have my back, that I'll be supported if I follow my heart. This has been, for me, a difficult thing to do. I feel like maybe I'm inching toward it, or at the very least, I am making decisions that are more heart aligned, almost regardless, like just saying, well, I hope the universe has my back, but whether it does or doesn't, I'm going for it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It's like, you don't know until you do it. I, like, you know, in my mind when I was in that job, is like, well, I can't possibly leave. Like, yes, I have savings, but I've got this mortgage, and this is our financial situation, and you know, I can't stay in the house. I'm going to lose the house. Like, I had all of these reasons why financially this was going to be a disaster. And then also too, I had a certain quality of life that I wanted to keep.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so it was like, and I mean, believe me, like, listen, if they weren't paying me what they were paying me, I would have been out of there so fast. I wouldn't, you know, I would not have been an issue, you know, would not have stayed. And so, yeah, I was really afraid to leave, and it was almost like, but I did it. And I didn't see that at the time, but I see it now. I was listening to myself. I was following myself, and I was supported in that. And I ended up moving to a home that I liked, and I'm still actually in it, that I love far more than the house I lived in there. I ended up getting to go on vacations that were far more luxurious and lavish than anything I got to go on while I was working. And so, and on top of that, I have been able to step into a life that I love. And so it's like these things are all connected. What I was really stepping into when I made these decisions to follow myself, when I made these decisions to, like, I didn't realize at the time what I was doing, but like to really be myself, I was actually stepping into abundance. And abundance is not just money. I made a lot of money when I was at that firm, but I promise you, I did not have anything close to abundance. And if you even look, it's like I was giving so much and just depleting myself so much. And like, yes, I got something, but like, did I even break even? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? And so it's almost like you don't know until you try it. But I had tons of money worries. Even after I left, I was like, oh my goodness, how is this ever going to work out? Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to sell this house. Oh my goodness, where are we going to live? Like it's not like the worry just went away. It didn't. And even after kind of things transpired where we sold the house and made the money and got the new house and got this like very, this beautiful home with this super low mortgage, it was like, it was like almost like it was happening, but I wasn't fully taking it in. The worry was still
Yeah, because like you
running.
said, it's what you knew, right? It was your go-to state.
It was my go-to state. Exactly.
Oh, Kara, please tell me and anyone listening and everyone listening how to change your overall state from one of anxiety and worry to one of trust and abundance.
Yeah. So, I mean, really what it is we're habituated to these. And, we've been habituated to them. And so we're used to them. And, it's our thoughts that are creating these states. Like we're thinking the thoughts, then we're feeling the feelings. And again, it's like we're habituated to them. And what happens is like we take on these untrue beliefs as children, and then they snowball, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is when we, it's like we take on these untrue beliefs, they snowball, and then we can look back at our whole experience and be like, I know this belief is true because look at all
like
my
a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing.
It is. And so there's what I found is there's a number of things to do so that we're moving into different states. And what the ultimate thing is it's, again, I've said this before, it's like the truth of who we are is there. It's always been there. We came into this experience not as a blank slate, and certainly not as deficient or defective. We came into this experience with great knowing. We came into this experience with gifts and talents. We came into this experience with our own uniqueness. And our natural states are one of abundance, are ones of joy, are ones of creativity. And so really and it's almost like we have hidden ourselves from ourselves, like taking on all of these beliefs that aren't true, letting them snowball, and then living from those beliefs, taking action from those beliefs. And so it's like we're living from this, and we're
reinforcing those beliefs.
Absolutely reinforcing them. So it's like we're living from this place of who we're not. But we think it's who we are, but it isn't. And in truth, the truth of us is still there, which is what I found. Our fundamental nature is still there. And when we tap into that and bring that forth, our life does change. We step out of these habituated states of anxiety, of, lack. Now, what that takes is, what I've found is, we're dynamic and complex beings, and because we have been so hidden from ourselves, is really how I like to say it. It takes something to then unhide us, to then step into the truth of who we are. At the same time, though, it's there, right? It's there. It's like, it's right there. It's in us. It's who we are. It's always been there. It's not something we have to go out and become. We already are it. It's just a matter of, it's like unhiding ourselves. And so it's like, well, what does that really entail? What does that really take? And what I've found is it does, because we're dynamic and complex beings, it does take a number of things, right? It takes us stepping into like really knowing and understanding that we hold within us great knowing, and that we are guided all the time by ourselves. And we know the thing for us. We know it. It's tapping into that knowing and stopping the just listening to others. And here's the thing too, it's like, what I found is people will be like, you know the path for you, you're intuitively guided. And that's wonderful to say. And it's like people will be like, oh, okay, I'm intuitively guided. Like, I get it. Like, I have intuition. I've got this like knowing within me and I can trust it. The issue is, and then what happens is people go out and they're like, oh, I know this is the thing for me. And then they do it and it doesn't work out. And then they're like, okay, now I don't trust myself, right? We've been hidden from ourselves. And so we have to differentiate what are subconscious beliefs, what are collective consciousness beliefs, like what are shoulds, needs, and have tos. Like we have to be able to really differentiate what is actually our internal knowing and our internal guidance and what isn't. And this is something that a lot of people aren't doing. And so they're kind of like, yeah, I get it. I have intuition or whatever, and I'm guided, but I don't really trust it because I've kind of tried and it hasn't worked out.
Mm-hmm.
They're not actually really tapped into it. So it's like it takes this kind of that knowing. It also takes us understanding how our minds work, understanding how our thoughts work, and being able to control and direct our minds and use our minds to serve us. And it's fascinating to me that we are so educated, we spend so much time being educated, and we don't understand how our minds work.
Wow.
We don't understand how to control and direct our minds. We're just run around by them. People will be like, oh, I have this monkey mind. I just want it to like stop. No, you can control and direct your mind. Your mind is meant to serve you, not to run you around. But like, we're not taught these things, right? And so that's another piece of it.
How did you learn that before you mentioned the other piece?
About the mind?
Yeah.
So this is really interesting. And this is what part of us understanding us is, and part of us tapping into us are tapping into the gifts and talents that we hold. We all have gifts and talents. We come into this experience with those. And this experience really is about us expressing and experiencing those. And so when I started to do Kundalini Yoga, and as I continue to do it, I started to get this mental clarity. And also I started to get really inspired. And what happened was, it was like I started to see, okay, all of these things that didn't work for me, why didn't they work? I started to understand and see that. And then I started to see, okay, but what if I did this? Or what if this happened? Or what about this? And then I started to do those things. And I was able to move myself into even greater levels of clarity, of like really being me and embracing me and knowing me. And so this, interestingly enough, this stuff about the mind, Kundalini Yoga does put us in a position where we, in meditation and in the things we do, we start to learn to control and direct the mind. We start to see ourselves as separate from the mind. And so that's part of it. And then the other part of it is a lot of this stuff, it's like it came to me, or I knew it, or like, and as I implemented it and worked with it, I saw that it actually did in fact work. So how I really see like the stuff that I have about the mind, it's really come from me and my own experience. And me seeing that like, okay, this works. And a lot of this stuff, it's so interesting as it kind of has unfolded for me. There's been this part of me that's been like, how do I know this stuff? But
So
then
it sounds almost like the knowing was within and you just cleared out all of the crap, if you will, and it presented itself because it was there. Do I have that right?
Yes, I would say that's very well stated. Yeah. It was part of me, it was like it started to flow from me and come out of me, and things started to become really clear. And again, there was this part of me that was like, how do I know this stuff and why do I know this stuff? But there was a part of me that was like, but I do. And when I'm implementing this stuff, it works. And when I started to then work with other people and see, and it works for them too. But again, like, and it sounds kind of like, we're in this experience where it's like, well, you have to be taught everything. Somebody has to tell you everything. Everything has to come from outside of you,
Mm.
right? And so as I'm saying this, people might be like, well, this is an unsatisfying answer to me because I want you to say that you went and trained and whatever, right? But here's the thing, we do have our own gifts and talents. They don't operate in a vacuum. I mean, obviously I'm engaged with the world. I've had all of these experiences. But we do have gifts and talents, and we do hold within us great knowing. And that, when we, like you said, it's like we clear the way, we unhide ourselves, it comes forth.
Was there a third component or another component you wanted to address before I ask the next question? Because
Yeah, the third component was really just, it's like our physical body. We've, part of us really stepping into who we are is we are in physical bodies. So our physical body is going to go with us. And so this is why Kundalini Yoga too is like, we've got to address the physical body because we're in it. Like the nervous system, the endocrine system, right? These things, like one of the things I worked on a lot was my adrenals. It's like we're in physical bodies. And so this is a component of it. We're not just in this intellectual realm, right? So it's like part of this really stepping into who you are is also addressing the physical body.
Yeah, I love that because it's our vehicle through which we express ourselves. So yeah. Wow. I have a bunch of questions. One of them is if you can speak to the difference between intellectually knowing something and knowing something from from a deeper place within yourself. What would you have to say about that?
So I would say when we use the word knowing or knowledge, we can have kind of like an intellectual understanding of something, but we don't actually know something until we experience it. That's what I would say. And so it's like, and this is too why like I do like Kundalini Yoga. It gives you an experience. It's you having an experience of I can feel good. It's you having an experience of I can think clearly. It's you having an experience of I can feel inspired. And it's like we don't really know something until we experience it. And we can discuss it intellectually all day, but we don't know it until we actually have the experience of it.
Fascinating. It's kind of like studying philosophy and knowing all of these ideas versus living them and feeling which ones are, feel legitimate and trustworthy and that serve you and that work for you. I have another question, which is in regard to the role of challenge and challenges in life. In other words, let's say that overnight I could wave a magic wand and suddenly shift and change the culture so that it is one that nourishes and supports each of us exploring our own unique gifts and talents and takes away any obstacles for doing so. Let's just entertain this. My guess is that it wouldn't suddenly be this utopia of just bliss for everybody, because it seems to me that challenges are, in a sense, and difficulties and struggles are a way in which we can access some of those gifts and talents, and that maybe even serve to turn them on, like to awaken them, perhaps. Like that without any challenge in life, we wouldn't necessarily, we wouldn't even know about some of them. What is your feeling about that, about, challenges in life and obstacles toward manifesting our deepest gifts and creativity?
Yeah, and this is an interesting question because it's like, do I think that we have to struggle and go through hardship in order to be and express ourselves? And I would say no, because it's like we're there, our creativity is there. But, and I do feel that people's lives do vary. You know, it's like some people, like you look at their lives like, oh my goodness, like the struggles you've had, the hardship you've had, that's so much. And other people, it isn't. You know what I mean? And so it's like, well, kind of what's going on there? And so I don't think it's like this necessary thing that we need to like struggle or go through hardship in order to know ourselves and express ourselves. I think it's like, but I do believe we are very powerful beings, and we have chosen to come into this experience and we wanted it. And so, you know, it's like, and two, just even the idea that we can be so powerful, hold within us such great knowing, hold within us such great creativity, and hide ourselves from ourselves. It's pretty amazing, really, that we can do that.
It's kind of like that old question: if God is all powerful, can God, create a rock that's too heavy for him to lift? Or that?
Yeah, right. It's kind of, I don't know. It's kind of interesting, and so, you know, I don't have like this like perfect answer for it, but it's like I do believe like we've all kind of chosen our own experience, and we wanted it in to a certain extent. And when we really, it's like our power we've been so told that we're not powerful. It's been such a persistent, constant messaging that it's almost like when we're in these states where we don't feel good, we're like, oh my goodness, this is the worst thing ever. I feel like such a victim. I would never choose this. This is terrible. You know, but it's like, it's coming from an untruthful place that we're seeing a lot of these things and experiencing them. But, and so what I would say for people though, is like, whatever kind of experience you're in, just like, for me, a lot of what I felt was like, I just wish this wasn't my life. Like, why am I experiencing this? You know what I mean? Like, and why aren't other people, you know, or why are for some people it's so much worse? Like, it just, and I would offer is just kind of like, wherever you are and whatever you're experiencing, like, let that be your own unique experience. Stop comparing it to others. And two, when you really start to step more into the truth of who you are, it really is these things that what we would call hardship and struggle. Like, yes, there is some of it. Challenge, though, to me is fun. Right? It's like, can I rise to this? Like, how powerful
That's kind of interesting.
Really?
Yeah, and it's kind of like, does it energize you? Because certain challenges definitely, I know, energize me. I'm drawn to them and I choose them.
Yes.
Like, right.
And you'd be bored without them. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so it's so interesting too, because my life used to feel like, oh, there's this other thing I have to do. Oh, there's this other hardship I have to go through. And I'm not saying that there aren't hardships people have to go. I mean, there are, but now a lot of the things I see, even when I start to be like, is this feeling hard to me? And I'm like, wait, is this actually a challenge that I can rise to? You know,
so is it a reframing?
Right. I think it's like you just, like it's like life has just taken on this different kind of perspective for me. It's like these things that happen now, I'm like, kind of like, oh, challenge accepted. Let's go. You know what I mean? As opposed to feeling like I'm such kind of like this victim. Why is this happening? You know, it doesn't mean I don't have the moments where I'm like, why is this happening? Or also too, when I look at, you know, again, there are some things that do really appear hard. But I would also offer, I do believe we are so removed in many instances, so hidden from the truth of who we are, that a lot of the things that we do perceive as these really horrible struggles, the truth of who we are doesn't see them in the same way. But we're not fully tapped into that. Like when you look at some of like the yogic masters and kind of the experiences that they have and the way they see life, it is so different from we're taught. And so I think the thing is like, again, it's like we're so hidden from who we are. We're so taken out of our power that we see so many things, and we're so confused in most instances about this experience that we view these things as being so hard and so terrible, when in fact there's a different vantage point that the truth of us holds that most of us are so not tapped into.
When you look at your life's journey thus far in retrospect, do you see things differently? Like, do you see maybe that some of your struggles had a purpose to them or not? Or do you, how do you look back on your previous experiences of, let's say, deep unhappiness even, or of being hidden from yourself? Do you feel that those were necessary parts of your journey looking back?
So I think they have, they've brought me to where I am, right? Because but at the same time, do I think they had to be so long and so much? And like, I really don't, you know what I mean? Like, I really, like, the truth of who I was there when I was a child. And I could have experienced that. And it might have looked different from what I'm currently doing, but there'd probably be some level of like similarity. And so, I mean, these are really good questions, but it's kind of like, do we have to go through so much hardship and so much struggle? And, did I have to spend most of my life to this date just being super unhappy and not expressing the truth of who I was, being very hidden from myself and kind of, being on autopilot, being half asleep most of the time, operating from beliefs that were completely untrue? Like, I don't think so.
Right.
You know what I
and
mean?
that begs the question, how do we change things? Right. And not just individually, but maybe collectively. How do we change the environment we're in so that people don't have to endure so much unnecessary suffering?
Yeah. And so what I would say is be you. Step into who you are, make it your absolute number one priority. Like, there is nothing more important than you being you. That is your absolute priority. Because when you step into you, you tap into the uniqueness that you are, you tap into the creativity that you hold, you tap into the abundance that you are, you tap into the love that you are, into the joy that you are. And when you do that, one, you feel really good. And you tap into the knowing that you hold, right? And so you feel really good, but from that place, that's where you benefit the world. Like, from that place of you being you, it's like, not only do you benefit you, but that's where you benefit the world. You don't benefit the world by being in a depleted state. You do not benefit the world by being in a depleted state. You do not benefit the world by pushing and fighting against things. That just gives you more to push and fight against, right? And that's putting your energy and attention on things that you don't want, which just makes them grow, right? And so what I would say is, like, put all of your energy, all your focus, and all your attention on you being you. And like, if parents, for instance, did that, what would they be showing to their children, right? What would they be showing up for their children, right? And it's like, I really just think, like, it's like we're so focused on all of these external things, doing all of these things that we think we should do, we have to do, we must do, other people are telling us to do, other people are telling us are going to make us happy or fulfilled or whatever. We're ending up in these depleted, diseased, confused states. And then it's like, well, I'll go benefit the world. How? You're a shell of who you really are. You're not being who you really are. Like, when you're being who you really are, I mean, you want to talk about benefiting others. That's where you benefit others.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And I think a great place to wrap up this conversation. I feel like we could continue for hours. We've already, so it's been, I thank you so much for showing up the way that you did for this conversation. I really appreciate it. And I will ask the final question because that's very relevant to what you just shared with us, which is, for yourself, who do you see the person you are and aspiring to be or continuing to be at this point in your journey?
Who do I see myself as? Is that the question?
Yeah, who is the person you want to be now? Where is life calling you now? What are your aspirations for yourself and for the world now?
Mhm.
As you've been, you've already been through this pretty impressive transformation and journey. So where are you now in that?
Okay. So my priority is still me being me. That is my priority. It's my top priority because it's like there's so much depth and dynamicness to us. And I think we've been so hidden from ourselves that and then there's always like this next kind of like level to go to in a way. It's so exciting and it's like I get to one point and I'm like, now, it's like this next, and it's become now this fun thing though, not this like, I'm in so much pain,
Right. It's not coming from a place of desperation.
It's not coming from a place of desperation. It's coming from a place of, I really ask myself this, like, how good can I feel?
What a great
Because I almost
question.
feel like we set this really low bar for ourselves. Like if I could just be healthy,
Or if I could just get through the day.
if I could just get through the day, if I could just have enough money to whatever.
Yeah.
So my question is, how good can I feel? Because it's almost like you don't know what you don't know, and it's like
Right.
It's
a what's possible question.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. And so my focus still is on me. It's on me being me, and I do believe that that is how I benefit others.
Right.
At the same time, I would say, coming from the experience that I came from, when I was in that law firm, one of the things is like, I really loved the people that I worked with and I really respected them. And I felt like they had such good intentions. Like they really tried to like do a good job and like do something, they were just really committed. And I know that's not just the people I worked with. I know that that's people, right? And when I decided to leave, it was like, and I kind of knew this before, but it was like people kind of came to me and are kind of like behind closed doors, kind of like, yeah, I don't really know that I'm really happy either, And then I'm seeing them work themselves to the bone. Not everybody, right? Some people were energized by that job. Some people were. A lot of people weren't, And I too remember one of my colleagues who was this just kind of beloved by everybody, this kind of shiny example of what the good attorney is. And I remember talking to her before I left, and she was like, you know what life is? She's like, it's just you work really hard and then you get a party with a cake before you leave your job and then you die. Like it was like looking at this beautiful woman, this person who I just loved and just thought was so wonderful. And, she's got the family and the children and the job and the everything, right? And I'm just looking at this like, what an absolute travesty. This is a travesty. People don't have to have this experience. And at the time, I didn't really know that people could have a different experience, but it bothered me so much. Like, wait a second, you've worked so hard, because again, I thought hard work was a good thing. You've worked so hard. You've been so committed. And again, like the people that I worked with, I felt like attorneys have all sorts of stereotypes around attorneys. But the people I worked with had so much integrity in what they were doing. I just so loved them and respected them. And it's like, no, like you should be happy. Like, no, this shouldn't, no, like this can't be. You didn't just come here to just deplete yourself to make some money. Like, no. And so, when I look back at my life, it's almost like I feel like I've lived two lives in one lifetime. And I look back and I think, oh my goodness, I could have missed this. I could have missed all of this. I could have missed, like now I look at life and I'm like, what a magnificent experience. I'm almost like I'm in awe of it. I look at my husband and I'm just kind of like, in awe. Like this man is sitting before me. It's like, I've never even seen you before. And now I see you. You know, or I'm outside and I watch this little cricket jumping through the grass. Like, and it sounds kind of cliche, but this is, you know, life is so different to me now. And I see myself so differently. I'm not like hating myself. I'm not being like, you're so nothing. I'm like, wow, you're creative. You know, it's like this wildly different experience. And I'm still in this world. I'm still walking around the same town on the same streets, you know, and yet I see life and experience life so differently. And I know that other people can have this experience because I'm having it. And like, I want that for other people. And so that too is something that really, like drives me in a sense, or inspires me, or just like, no, we can have such a wildly different experience. And it's not that far away. It's not us going out and becoming something. Like, we already are it. It's just tapping
It's about
into
uncovering that, right?
Yeah.
It's the way you described it sounds like you've woken up to your life. You've woken up to your own magnificence and the magnificence of life. So you're in the same setting, the same house, the same town, same husband, everything. But now you see with different eyes because you're more awake, you're more alive, you're more attuned. Would you say that is accurate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, you know, my husband is such a good example. You know, I have been in a relationship with him since high school. And I'm just amazed. Like, I never really saw him. And people would be like, oh, you have such a good relationship. And I'd be like, yeah, we do have such a good relationship. And it's like, again, it's like, how good can I feel? And how good can things actually get? And now it's like, sometimes like he'll walk in a room or he'll do something and I'm just kind of like looking at him like, I could have missed this.
Wow.
I could have missed this. And like, you don't get it again. Like, this is like, this experience is this experience. I'm not saying like, I don't want to like, it's not like I like to operate from a place of fear, a place of lack, but it's like these moments, you know,
treasuring them.
They're so beautiful. And like, that's why we're here. Like, we're here for like these moments, and like the way I just see people now, or like the way I revel in like my two little dogs, or just, we can have such a different experience, and I want it for everyone. And if people were having this experience, if they were in the truth of who they are, like, we would have this world. It would be very different.
Wow. Kara Nicole Bitar, thank you again. This has been fantastic. Really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure a lot of other people will benefit from it as well. And I'm going to include links to your website and ways people can reach you in the show notes. But if you'd like to speak to that yourself as we close here, please go ahead and let us know where people can reach you and how people might work with you if they choose to. And actually, one other question that just popped into my head that I meant to ask you, which is that, have any of your colleagues, your former colleagues at the law firm, having witnessed your own escape and transformation, have they sought you out? Have they become clients perhaps, or say, I'll have what she's having?
Yeah, so this is interesting. No.
Wow. Interesting is right.
Yeah, no. I've had people in the law profession come to me as clients, medical profession. No. Not a single person from that experience. And it's kind of interesting, but yeah.
Okay, so tell us about your services and offerings and where people can find you, please.
So the best way to find me is my website. It's KaraNicoleBitar.com, KaraNicoleBitar.com. And so I offer live stream Kundalini Yoga classes. I also provide the recordings of the classes. If you join the classes, you also get daily practice recordings. And then I have programs that I developed that include Kundalini Yoga, and they include it from a point of like I customize it more in the programs to the person. The programs also include 12 weeks of recorded information, kind of setting forth these understandings that I would say are so fundamental to who we are and to tapping into who we are. They also include one-on-one coaching, and then I also do these very interesting readings as part of the programs. And one of those, for instance, goes into what a person's gifts and talents are and how they're structured to thrive. And so what I did with these programs really was I put in them all of the things that really are like, it's like, okay, how do I really tap someone into who they are in the most efficient and effective way possible? And how do I do it too if someone is, say, in that situation where they are really busy? So I really looked at the programs and like, okay, I'm an attorney. I was working the hours that I was working. I'm billing in 6-minute increments. What is it that would have moved the dial for me? What is it that could have worked for me that would have fit into that lifestyle that I was in? And so that's really how I've structured these programs. And so if someone is interested in those, what I offer is like a complimentary call, so they can like learn about it, see if it's a fit for them, talk about what it is that they're wanting, what their goals are. And so it's just something to like, it's just a really good thing to explore whether they end up in them or not. But so all of that is available on my website, and also I'm available on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Nicole Bitar.
Awesome. Once again, thank you so much. I am very glad that you haven't billed me in 6-minute increments for this conversation. And it's been a total delight and pleasure speaking with you, Kara. Thank you so much. All best wishes your way. Namaste.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.